Well, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. Let me stop transcription here. We welcome you back to our Webb County Lunch and Learn series for the horticulture, lawn and garden kind of realm. We've had a plethora of topics so far this summer. We are down to our last couple. We have one today, and we'll follow up with our last one here in a couple of weeks, and we'll kind of talk about that at the very end. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our president of our Master Gardener Association in the works, Mr. JJ Flores. And JJ, if you'll introduce our speaker, and then we'll get on with our program today. Thanks for you all joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. So it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Ashley Gregory, an esteemed professional with extensive expertise in horticulture and landscape management. Ashley serves as a horticulture agent at Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service, where she plays a pivotal role in supporting the community through education and outreach on sustainable gardening practices. With a strong academic foundation from Texas A&M University, Ashley holds a Bachelor's of Science in Horticulture and has spent her career dedicated to enhancing the beauty and sustainability of our landscapes. Her work in particularly focused on helping both amateur and professional gardeners make informed decisions about plant selection, water conservation, and pest management to ensuring that our ornamental landscapes thrive in harmony with our environment. Ashley's contributions go beyond her role as an educator. She is also deeply involved in various community programs and initiatives, including her efforts with the Texas Master Gardener Program. Her passion for horticulture and commitment to sustainability practices make her a leading voice in her field. Today, Ashley will be sharing her insights on the impact ornamental plays in our landscape, a topic that highlights the importance of ornamental plants not just for the aesthetic value, but also for their ecological and environmental contributions. Please please join me in welcoming Ashley Gregory.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. That is probably the nicest introduction I have ever had. So thank you so much for that. I truly appreciate it. So my name is Ashley Gregory. I'm the horticulture agent down in Hidalgo County. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about enhancing curb appeal. And yes, we're small groups, so we'll keep it informal. Put your questions in the chat box. And, when I'm going through slides, I may stop as I'm moving on to the next topic and answer questions, or I may save those for the very end. So I do want to just, kind of start off by saying that Texas is a huge state. And I will be honest that I'm not super familiar with the plants and the landscape that work great out in West Texas. And so I'm going to try to focus a little bit more on ideas of things that you can do and touch very generally on the importance of understanding the plants that you're selecting and how they're going to pair together. So wanted to give that brief disclaimer. I am by no means an expert in the plants of West Texas, but I know that we have a lot of similarity as far as it's very hot. And so a lot of things that do well here will do well in your area too. So let's just go ahead and dive right into this. We're going to be talking about enhancing curb appeal. And so I wanted to just start off with this little message. Dr. Steve George is a longtime extension specialist. He's out in College Station. He teaches some landscape design courses, and so he has a lot of expertise. And one thing that he likes to say when talking about curb appeal is he encourages homeowners to envision, the front of your home kind of as a painting. That whole landscape is a picture that you're painting, and the front door, the entrance, that's the focal point of that. And everything that you're putting out there, your plants, your, statues, art, whatever it may be, hardscapes, objects, all of those should really enhance and draw people into that main entrance of the home. So that's kind of the goal that we're going here for. We're going to talk about things that can help make your home inviting and just kind of encourage people to want to just walk right up. Think about that before you make your front lawn so inviting, right? Do you want them coming to your door? So let's go ahead and talk about some of the things. Actually, let's stop. Let's talk about why it's even important to think about curb appeal beyond the fact that you want your home to, look aesthetically pleasing and inviting. But if you're like many of the people today, I know in my own neighborhood, I drove down the street this morning and there were 3 homes for sale. So if that is something that you're also considering, curb appeal is one of those things that you truly do get a return. So on average, projects in the front of the home, specifically talking about curb appeal, have about a 7% increase in home value. And then on top of that, the return on investment is usually 100%. So a lot of times you hear people talking about, oh, it's not worth updating the bathroom or the kitchen because you're not going to get anything out of that if you turn around and sell it. But landscape and curb appeal is actually something that's really worth the investment, and you're going to get a really high return on whatever amount you put into that. Additionally, a survey of realtors suggested that 79% of them thought that curb appeal was really key to attracting buyers, and 94% said that whenever they're dealing with a new client, they always suggest improving curb appeal before putting it out there as a listing. So just a couple of reasons why we might want to do this besides just thinking about it looks pretty. And actually, let me see, where is our chat just in case? Okay, nothing there. All right. So what are some of the things that we're going to cover today? We're going to talk about some really simple things and hopefully inexpensive things that you can do to add some quick curb appeal to your home. So we'll talk about just tidying up, how you can add texture, maybe some improvements with the turf, incorporating different types of hardscape, enhancing the entrance, using furniture and decor. And then we'll talk a little bit about sustainable practices, illuminating the space, and then just getting creative with it. So I think tidying up is obviously one of the easiest and quickest things that you can do to add some curb appeal to the front of your home. Besides, just that regular maintenance of keeping the lawn mowed, keeping those edges nice and cleaned, removing any litter, debris when plants die. And I mean, I'm guilty of this myself. I have 3 potted plants on my front stoop that have been dead for months and they're still there. So, it's like you say, the shoemaker and his kids are shoeless, and that's kind of how it ends up being. But these are really simple things that we can do to really improve what the front of our home looks like. Pruning and trimming, if you have shrubs, trees, all that kind of stuff, it's really important to prune that at the right time, keep it nice, looking clean. And then even with trees, if you have large trees in your front yard, one of our A&M foresters told me this several years ago, but he made a great point that I really never thought about until that moment. But you really don't find grass and trees, turf grass in particular, in nature. They don't really exist that way because grass likes a lot of sun. So when you're out there tidying up and thinking about that, if you have a large tree in your front yard, you may want to consider thinning that canopy to allow some better light down to the grass if you're having issues or seeing that the lawn is looking spotty. And then another thing, of course, pressure wash, clean the driveway, walkways, gutters. You can even pressure wash furniture. So just keeping things clean and fresh. I just had a young man stop by my house yesterday offering to pressure wash the drive for like $20. So people are out there. He was like a high school kid just trying to make some money. So if you don't want to do it yourself, there's definitely people out there to do it for you. But first and most simple thing you can do is just keep it clean, right? Adding texture. So I made this presentation on Canva. This is my first time using Canva for a PowerPoint. And so I really am loving my little AI generated image here, just so everyone knows like this is not real life. But I told it what I wanted it to look like, and it gave me this gorgeous image. I doubt any of our front yards are going to look like this, but adding texture is a great way to, really liven up that front yard space. A lot of times we might have like a little corner pocket between the home and the driveway, a space where we could really fill in and add some depth and height and texture. And so when you're thinking about doing something where it's, and the reason we say texture is because a lot of times we have things that are not blooming year round. Annuals are great for a pop of color, but if you're looking for some kind of a low maintenance interest and something that's eye-catching for that front area space, having texture can really add to that eye-catching element. So here, what they've done is they have layered in plants first with different colored foliage, as you can kind of see in this image. Even though it's AI generated, it is something that is realistically feasible to accomplish. But one thing that you'll notice with this image is there really isn't anything blooming. All of this texture and color is all coming from the foliage of the plants. And so you can really think about choosing things with different colors, different leaf shapes, and even different leaf feels. So we have some really broad leaf things that might be smooth. You have some smaller fern type of plants with really delicate type of leaf foliage. And so just mixing in those different contrasting elements really adds a lot to that appeal of the front yard, right? Now, one thing that I do want to say is when you're thinking about this, and I think this is something that happens very commonly when we're doing a landscape or a type of an update, is that we want to get that instant gratification, right? And we want to feel that finished result right away. But I do caution you with that, because a lot of times that leads to a very overgrown landscape. So when you're buying your plants, really look at the card information that comes with it. If it doesn't have that, do a little bit of background research. What is the mature size of this plant? And then give it some space. Don't plant things so close to it. Think about what is that mature size going to be, and plant based on those mature sizes. If not, you will end up with something that ends up feeling a little crowded and overgrown. One example that I always think of is, I actually myself, before I was working with AgriLife, was in the Master Gardener program. And I remember being in that class, going and touring this new home that had just put in this really beautiful landscape in the front yard. And then, fast forward 5 years down the road, and I'm an agent. And I remember driving by this home and thinking like, oh my gosh, it looks like a jungle. So, yes, it looked great immediately when they put it in, but then they created a lot of work for themselves down the road as they had to maintain and prune back that landscape. Mulch is another great way to add texture. I'm a huge proponent of mulch. I get a lot of comments like against mulch. I just can't understand it. To me, there isn't a single negative thing about mulch. I personally prefer, native tree stump type mulches. If you have somewhere where you can get that, like a recycling center, or somewhere where they, I know here we have one of our cities does compost and mulch. They sell that. And so we're able to get that native tree bark stump mulch. If not, Lowe's, Home Depot, garden centers, they have great options for mulch. And I think with mulch, it's really a personal preference. I'm not a fan of the dyed and colored mulches. But mulch is one way to really pull a landscape together and give it a really clean, finished look. So again, for me, there is nothing I see no negatives of mulch. And so we talked about the foliage. Annuals. Annuals are another really great way to just add that pop of color. Sometimes our permanent landscape, like I was saying, it can tend to just be really green if you haven't given it some pre-thought about incorporating different colors and textures of foliage. Then a lot of times our landscape can just be, green shrubs, green trees, green grass. And so working with your annuals, winter annuals, summer annuals, and swapping those out as the season changes. Usually annuals are very inexpensive. They don't require too much care. These are plants that have been, grown and tried and tested over decades. And so they're usually pretty hardy for their season, and just a really nice and easy, fast way to add some color into your front yard landscape. Okay, moving right along. Lawn. For here in particular, and I don't know about your area in West Texas, because I don't spend a lot of time driving around over there, but lawns are a huge thing here. Everybody wants a big green front yard. And in our area in particular, we have a lot of issues with grass. So I will say it's a touchy subject for me. The majority of the questions and phone calls I get deal with turf grass issues. So that can be an eyesore really for a lot of people who are wanting the front of their home to look nice. If their lawn doesn't look nice, then they feel like, the whole thing is a mess. So if you're experiencing some issues with your lawn, reseeding or resodding is always a quick and fast way to get that really greened up and looking full and complete again. I will caution you though, if you are having issues with your lawn, reseeding and resodding are not going to solve that. It's just kind of like a Band-Aid. So it's always a good idea to kind of figure out what is actually going on. So a soil sample or sending off your turf grass to our plant lab to really get an actual laboratory diagnosis of what type of issues you have can save you a lot of time and money in the long run. So that's definitely an option. But one thing that I recommend for our area in particular is, if you're starting to see some issues with the lawn being patchy, or the grass is dying back, you're seeing yellowing, different things like that. Drainage is an issue for our area. And we'll talk a little bit about soil type further into the presentation, but knowing and understanding your soil is really important. And so drainage can be an issue. I recommend every couple of years an aerating and top dressing. And so aerating is when you use a machine that literally takes like little plugs out of the soil. And then so it's creating space. And then we recommend you come back and top dress where you're spreading compost across the lawn. And so if you aerate first, what that really does is allows that compost to immediately work its way down into the soil to improve structure, drainage, water holding capacity, all of that kind of stuff. So, if you've had lawn issues, this is something that you can consider. If you have in-ground irrigation in your lawn, I also highly recommend an irrigation audit. This is something that if you do a quick search online, we have a whole sheet on how to do this. We even sell a little catch can system where you can test your irrigation system to see exactly how much water it's putting out. The other part of the audit is to check for anything broken or that's not working properly. So all of those things really play into the overall health of the lawn. So things to consider when you're wanting to make it sure that it looks its best. Incorporating hardscapes. So, hardscapes are a really big part of having a really functional lawn. And so there's a lot of things that you can do in the front with hardscapes to really enhance the look and the appeal of your front yard. Borders are a great way to really, give a very complete and finished look. You can do that yourself using different types of stones and bricks to put in borders. And then of course, now they have these really cool machines where they come in and they can do concrete curbing, like all along your beds. We've done this at our Master Gardener Educational Garden in a lot of the areas. We're hoping to have the whole garden done soon. But this has really been a great help for us in really being able to distinguish, this is the bed, this is the walkway, this is the grass. And so we've really liked that. And again, it just really adds that really nice finished touch to a bed or the front lawn. The mailbox is another really easy way to add some a nice new feature, and not just changing out the mailbox or putting in a new mailbox, but you can even I've seen all kinds of really nice ways to put little plantings, whether that's a perennial type of thing where you might put in some butterfly plants around the mailbox that'll be there year over year, or even just putting an annual planting that you're swapping out seasonally to add some color. A great way to add and attract some really attract some beauty to the front of the yard. Retaining walls, I love a retaining wall. And retaining walls are not only, an element of the hardscape that can add just another element to look at, but they can also be very functional. If you have any type of slope or even a gradual, decline in that yard. Now, I've seen some really dramatic sloping, but even a gradual slope, you can put in a retaining wall, and that kind of can help add some elements of elevation. And also, depending on the kind of wall that you put in, it can also work as seating. So a lot of benefits with retaining walls, and a lot of functionality to that. They can really, if you have any type of slope in the front yard, this can really help with erosion and runoff. So another great thing. And then the other thing with hardscapes, if most people already have a sidewalk going to the front door, but a lot of times that sidewalk goes directly to the street, and maybe your driveway is off to the side, and you want to add in a little walkway from the driveway over to the sidewalk. There's all kinds of ways you can add in walkways and features, or maybe you have a little garden off into the side of the front yard, and you want to add a little walkway to that. So rocks and boulders, using those to create more natural looking type of pathways instead of our traditional concrete sidewalks, can be a really nice way to add in just some different features. And also the thing about using, rocks and stones, and even just putting together pavers as walkways, is those surfaces are permeable as opposed to our driveways and concrete sidewalks. And this will allow the water to infiltrate down into your soil as opposed to just running straight off into, wastewater and stormwater type of things. The other thing is that, rocks, large boulders and stuff, they can be features of the landscape themselves. You can put them to fill spaces, or to maybe separate or draw attention to a particular, maybe a really showy flowering plant, or a really pretty tree that you really don't want anything to grow in around it, but you just want to kind of save that space or draw some attention to it. I know in our own master gardener and our educational garden, we've done some faux rocks where we've constructed them and actually turned them into little water features. So there's all kinds of things that you can do with stones and rocks, and even fake ones. Like, we've made them, they literally look like a rock, but you can pick it up. Like, they're huge, but they're very lightweight. So a lot of different things that you can do in that regard to add some fresh features to your front yard. Of course, like we said, you're really wanting to draw your attention and your focal point straight to that front door. And so, getting a new door or even just repainting or restaining is a really fast and easy way to enhance the curb appeal and add that, eye-catching attention right to the front. Planters are a really easy way to work in annual color. They can be placed on the steps, on the patio. You can put in window boxes. I was doing a little search on window boxes. Now they have these really nice ones that are made out of PVC. They have like lifetime warranties. So you don't have to worry about, them rotting or breaking or going bad with all that. Obviously they have to be watered. So these PVC ones, I mean, they came in endless varieties, and they were pretty reasonable, and really simple to install. So that's also a great way to add some really cute, fresh appeal to the front yard. One thing that I do want to mention again, you have things in pots are going to need a little bit more water than things in the landscape. They can't, send out their roots searching for water. So definitely, if you're going to put in a window box, or you're going to put planters on the front stoop or on the patio, make sure that you're thinking about, okay, how often am I going to water these? Or a lot of people might even put in a little irrigation system with these, like a little drip line or something. But pots need more water than plants in the landscape. You can see in this picture here, they have these little catch trays under the pots. That's a great idea if you don't want that water running out all over your steps or your patio. But you have to keep in mind that while plants need water, they also need oxygen. And so the roots don't want to be sitting in water for an extended period of time. So I definitely would recommend that, after you give your plants a good, nice soaking of water, that next day, or even a couple hours after you've watered them, come back and check those little catch trays and make sure you empty them out. Because if that water just stays sitting there, it is going to affect the roots of the plant, and it will start to decline. On the opposite side of that, I did want to mention that potting soil it's a sterile product. It's something that's made out of a combination of elements. It is not a living thing like the soil, and it has a lot of peat in it. And so one thing about potting soil is when it becomes completely dried out, it actually becomes hydrophobic, meaning that it actually repels water. So take a moment to look into your potted plants. And if you see a gap of space between the pot and that, and the potting soil, then you know that the soil is too dry. And if you water it from the top, that water is just going to run right through the pot and out the bottom. So if you get to the point, excuse me, if you get to the point where your potting soil has gotten that dry, you actually need to water it from the bottom. And you can actually utilize these little trays or something a little bit deeper, a couple of inches, and just set your pot into that bucket or tray or whatever and let it soak that water from the bottom up. And that will be the way to re-wet it, and avoid that hydrophobic situation that happens when the soil gets too dry. Okay, let me check, make sure we don't have any questions. It will just, yeah. I mean, turf grass is just such, there are reasons to have turf grass, right? We need sports and run and all that, but it can be such a pain to maintain. Outdoor furniture and decor, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this, but, adding some type of seating, fun statues, water features, even a really simple little bird bath. Not only is it pretty and attractive and, is going to add appeal to the front, but you're welcoming and inviting, our little friends from the wildlife. You'll have pretty birds to look at, maybe little squirrels getting a drink of water, even, butterflies, bees, all of that need some place to get a drink. And so, not only are you adding a nice element, but you're supporting your wildlife and you're bringing something else nice to look at. And I will add, if you are interested in, having water for butterflies, bees, pollinators, and things like that, we do that a little bit differently. So you can use a small little dish or tray like this, but you would want to fill it with something like decomposed granite or put little twigs or sticks and things in there so that those little insects have something to land on, to be able to get to that water. And so I know that, a lot of times we tend to focus our seating areas and things like that to the backyard. But, having a nice rocking chair on the front patio or a little seating area off to the side of the front yard, can be very nice. I've seen some really nice ones driving around down here and can really add, a welcoming and inviting feature to the front of your yard. Sustainable practices. Of course, I'm a gardener, I'm a horticulturalist. I love all plants. I love anything with a beautiful flower. But, I have to be realistic and know that not everything is going to grow in my yard and my landscape in this area. So, definitely think about what you put in your front yard. Is there a way to make that more sustainable? I'm all about plant it and forget it. So I love native plants. I want something that's just going to thrive on its own. I don't really want to have to be out there babying things. We all feel differently about that. But if you have that type of mentality where you just kind of want to plant something and move on from that, thinking sustainably is a great way to make your landscape maintenance a lot easier, but also support native wildlife and habitat. And so plant trees, right? We all, when was the best time to plant a tree? Yesterday, but we can still do it today. So I definitely, there's a lot of great benefits to having trees in your front yard. Not only do they offer shade for you, depending on the tree and the size, and if it's in the right place, it can offer shade to your home, which can even, work at reducing your energy costs. And, I think again, this goes back to really knowing the plant that you're purchasing and that you're going to put in. We have some neighborhoods here that are, heritage oak and oak manor and this and that in oak, and they have HOAs. And part of the rule is that every front yard has to have an oak tree. I mean, if you look at the actual mature size of an oak tree, you're supposed to plant those, 50 feet apart from each other. And these front yards probably aren't even 50 feet wide. So you really need to think about what you're putting, how big is this going to get, and does it really fit in the space that I have for it? The other thing, and I won't get into, we're going to talk a little bit later about proper planting and watering for large trees, so I'm not going to get too much into it now. But trees are a great addition to the front yard, and if it's the right size, it's going to offer a long-term benefits to that yard. I put here an example of this is a tree that grows well here in the valley and does well in your area also. We call it retama. I'd never heard it called Jerusalem thorn before, but when I was kind of looking in the West Texas area, that was the name that I was seeing for that. I love this tree, native, fast grower, offers dappled shade, which is really great for a front yard. Really pretty flowers, really puts on a show when it's blooming, and it's going to attract tons of local native wildlife. So this is one that I really like. Native plants in general are going to be a lot less maintenance just because they're already adapted to our climate, to our environment. And even though, we're typically hot, they've adapted to our area over hundreds and hundreds of years. So they know that every now and then we're going to get a freeze or some kind of weird storm. So I know particularly down in the valley, in 2021, when we had Winter Storm Uri, because our area here is very tropical, subtropical, a lot of people have very tropical landscapes, and those landscapes were just decimated after that storm, just dead. People had to, completely start over. But people who had native plants in their yard, even if those plants died from the ground up, the roots survived and they came back very quickly. And, before you knew it, it was like you had that full-size plant again. So there's a lot of benefit to including native plants in your landscape. They're just better suited for our climate fluctuations. And then, of course, I have to go back on harping that they support the native wildlife, the habitats. And then the main point for me is that they're going to be low maintenance. And with just a little bit of extra water and care, they are gonna look a lot better than they do in our native landscapes. They're gonna be showier, they're gonna have a nicer form to them. And so a little bit goes a really long way with native plants, which is why I can never say enough on natives. The other thing that, I haven't had an opportunity to incorporate this into any of my demonstration gardens or in my yard, but I really love the idea of rain gardens. Now, they can be a little bit tricky because you do need plants that can tolerate having wet roots for a short period of time and then go to the opposite of handling, extreme drought. But typically, the majority of our native plants can work for this. But rain gardens are a really great way to catch and keep that water in your yard. So one thing that happens really commonly, in our home landscapes, especially when we have driveways, sidewalks, and then just a lawn of turf grass, that water, it runs quickly off and into the street and into the storm drains. And so one way that you can keep that water and get it to percolate down into your soil profile right there on your piece of property is a rain garden. And so AgriLife has a lot of publications on rain gardens, on how to build them, and even has some really good plant lists on what you can put in there. But this one here in the corner is an example of a little rain garden. And so they just took a natural shallow depression in their front area and filled that area with different sized rocks and stones, and then planted around it to really allow that area to capture and hold water in the event that they have a rainstorm. And so here for us, our rain, we go extended periods of time without any rain, and then, it'll all come at one time. So I think in West Texas, you guys probably get a little less rain than we do, but you know, you want to capture that water and hold on to it when it's there. Illuminate the space. So this is something that I've kind of just started doing on my own property recently, is putting in some outdoor lighting. This is just, you know, when we think about curb appeal, we're usually thinking about what it looks like in the daytime, but you know, night exists, right? So having lighting in your front yard is, you know, a really great way to make it inviting and appealing at night. Maybe you're having parties, guests, whatever. It's a way to signal this is the walkway, or maybe highlight something that, you know, you can't see really well at night. We put in some of, so you can do a mixture, right? There's all kinds of different light. There's down lighting, up lighting, and then there's just that kind of like, there's string lighting that's really popular now. But we did some up lighting like below our trees, so where it shines up at night to kind of illuminate that canopy. And it just looks so nice from a distance as you're driving by. You think like, I want to go there. I want to be in that space. So, you know, lighting is, and now they have so many lighting options, especially on the solar side. Solar lighting especially is really easy to install. There's usually no kind of wiring or anything like that. You just put it right there where you want it. And so now I will say you can buy all kinds of solar lights at Dollar Tree and Walmart and whatever, and those are probably short-lived. But if you invest in a little bit higher quality, solar lighting can be a really nice way, a really quick and easy way to bring that feature to your front yard or any part of your yard, really. So get creative, right? There's so many different things that you can do in the realm of gardening. And today with social media and all these online platforms, the ideas are endless of what you can do. But here are just a couple of quick things that I really like and would incorporate in my own home. So you know, vertical gardens, if you have a small space, vertical is a great way to utilize that space. Here, they've taken some simple wooden ladders, and I don't even think this was a ladder. I think somebody made this, and they put these, just a really simple little metal trough between these two pieces of wood, and created this really, really cute vertical planting. And it has annuals in it. It's really easy and super cute, really adds to your space. It draws the eye up and down. And again, if you have a small space, this is a really great way to add in more plants. Garden art is a great way to, you know, bring some extra excitement, some interesting elements to your landscape. And I mean, you can go both ways with this. Garden art, you know, could be actual art things that you purchase in places to incorporate little statues. You have all kinds of spinny things, wind chimes, sun catchers. There's all kinds of things. But you can also, you know, make your own art. I have a master gardener who has a background in art, and she did this really interesting presentation on how she just goes out into her yard and collects random things, leaves, branches, even like feathers, things that she finds, and just makes these really cool displays. She'll arrange things in vases, or, you know, she even took this tree. It was like she found somewhere that died, and she like put it up in her yard and decorates it. So I mean, like I said, the options are endless. There's so many things you can do as far as garden art. I mean, here they took what looks like maybe a tree that either fell or that they had to cut down. They hollowed it out and turned it into a planter. Love this, great idea. Really just a natural way, a natural element in the landscape that you've made look really nice and pretty. I've seen people do this with succulents, gorgeous. And then upcycle. There's all kinds of, I mean, we've just turned into, you know, we throw everything away, and I'm guilty of it myself. If I haven't used it, just get rid of it. But there's so many things that we can reuse in our landscape. Here, she's taken a really old tub and turned it into a planter, added a trellis behind it. So she's upcycling, she's going vertical. So there's just so many different ways that you can get creative in your yard, whether it's the front yard or the backyard. All right, so I think this is the last slide I have as far as the tips. And then I'm going to kind of change gears a little bit and talk a little bit about planting and care for plants and things like that. So I had hoped that I was going to have more time to really get into, what are the plants that do well in your area. And unfortunately, I didn't, but I didn't want to leave you without some resources. Maybe you already know about these. If you don't, these are really great tools. So Earthkind Landscaping this is a program that is out of Texas A&M. And so the idea behind Earthkind Landscaping is really combining the best of both worlds. So using really sustainable, low impact, low maintenance practices, but also, using chemicals when you need to. Now, chemical use is kind of like the last resort in the Earthkind principles, but we're not opposed to it when it's necessary. And so there are all kinds of different things that you can find on the Earthkind landscape. On the Earthkind Landscaping website, as far as reducing water, like all kinds of tips on how to make your landscape Earthkind friendly. But one of the really great features it has is this Earthkind plant selector. It has our state broken up into different regions. You can search this by zip code or by region. Down here is the actual website address. And so this will it'll actually give you a plant list of plants that will do well in your area. So this is a really great tool that we like to share with everyone because, again, it is set up for the whole state. The other thing that I wanted to share with you, if you're not already familiar, is the Texas Superstar program. This is also a program that is backed by Texas A&M. And so the idea with the Texas Superstars is that the plants that receive the designation of a Texas Superstar, they have been tried in result trials across the state of Texas. And in those trials, they have performed really well with low maintenance, minimal inputs, minimal maintenance as far as pruning, water, fertilizing, all of that. And these plants have not only survived, but they've thrived and they're very showy and pretty. So if this plant has received the designation, you know that it has done well across the state of Texas. And so anything in this book should do well in your area. Also, this is the website down here. There is a brochure of this that's published every other year, I think. And so TDA usually gives those out. But the website also is up to date with all the plants. And so you can go in here and you can find where you can buy them. And it also has a tool kind of like Earthkind where you can go in and search for particular, like if you're looking for an annual or a tree. And the nice thing about the Superstars is they really do have something in every category. They have trees, they have annuals, perennials, and there are even some vegetables and fruit trees in there too. So a really great resource if you have not used that. Okay, so we can't talk about plants without talking about soil. I think it's so important to really take the time to understand your soil and how water moves through your soil, because that's going to really affect what you're able to plant in your yard and then how you care for that. So take the time to understand how your soil is working. So the water, this little thing here, the soil drainage, how to test for soil drainage. I just did a quick search and this was one that popped up and I liked the way it looked. We do have something similar, I believe, with AgriLife, but it's a really simple thing to do. You're basically just going to dig a hole in your yard, fill it with water, and time how long it takes for that water to drain out. And based on how long that takes is going to help you determine if you have a fast draining soil or if you have drainage issues. So this is something really good to do, before you put in anything new, to really give you an idea, like, do I need to amend the soil? Will this plant work here? Do I need to find a better area for it? Fertilization, especially if you have turf grass, is probably going to be important. I'm more of a compost person. I like to top dress with compost. I think, it's really hot here. So putting in compost twice a year, mulch twice a year, those are really important things to help. Not just the thing with compost, I don't have anything against fertilizers. They're great, and sometimes we have to use them. But I think with fertilizers, it's like an immediate type of thing. It's going to fix whatever's happening in that moment at that time. And fertilizers are really important if you're trying to produce something, like if you're growing fruits and vegetables and things like that. But what I like about compost is that compost is like long term. This is, if you're incorporating compost either just by putting it out on the top or actually doing an aeration and then coming back on top with the compost, compost is going to work its way into the soil, and it's going to provide long term benefits to improving soil structure. And when you improve soil structure, then you not only improve water holding capacity, but you also improve drainage. So there's so many benefits to that, and I highly do recommend, even if you don't do it on your turf, incorporating compost into your beds and your landscape at least once a year and especially if you're using native plants, would really, you wouldn't need to use fertilizer. I did put on here the web soil survey. This is a really great tool. This is from USDA and RCS, and so this is one of those websites where it's kind of like Google Maps. You go in and you put your address and you can zoom in onto a particular area, and it'll give you a complete breakdown of the soil type that you have there. And it gives you all kinds of tons of information about the soil. So soil hole test, soil web survey, these are two great tools to really give you some quick information about your soil and what you can do with your soil. We also do soil testing at A&M and College Station. So if that's something that you're interested in, I'm sure Jeffrey will have all of that information on how you can go and submit a sample to get an actual analysis of your soil. And so actually probably should have started with this slide, but this is what I was talking about when I was saying that water moves through different soil types differently. So if you see this little image here, this large yellow circle represents a sand particle. The smaller greenish color is silt, and then the teeny tiny black dot is clay. Now, I'm not very familiar with your soil type in your area. I know here we have heavy clay soil. And so the thing about clay soil is that it holds very tightly to water, and the water moves this way before it moves down. So that's important to know when you're watering your yard, because you may need to implement something that's called cycle and soak, where you cycle, you water for 10 minutes and then you water the next area, the next area, the next area, and then you come back and water where you started for another 10 minutes. And that cycling gives the water time to move down. If you just water with clay soil, if you just put all that 30 minutes of water out at one time, there's a good chance that half of that water is just going to run away. But if you put it out in 10-minute increments where you're watering other areas in between, then you're allowing that water to move down. Maybe you have more of a sandy soil. It would be the opposite for sandy soil. If you have a sandy soil, the water is going to move down very quickly. So you would want to use something like a drip irrigation system where it's putting the water out very slowly, so it's not just all straight running down. Loam is really the idea. That's like a good mixture of clay and sand, and that's the ideal soil type that we look for, that just has really nice water holding capacity where it's moving down slowly and holding into that soil. So just a couple of things. I think once people really understand their soil and how water and things are moving through that goes a long way to understanding how much you need to water and how you need to water. Let's talk about watering. People always want to know, how much do I water? Oh my gosh, that's just a hard question to answer because it depends on the plant, it depends on the soil, so many factors. How are you putting out the water? So this is definitely going to vary by the plant that you're using, but I will give you some generalities here in that if you have a garden bed, a landscape bed, we highly recommend drip irrigation for those type of beds. A drip line doesn't have to be buried under the soil. It can be on top and you can cover it with mulch, which I like that, because then if you have any issues with that drip line, it's very easy to get to it and repair it. For turf grass, we really do recommend an in-ground irrigation type of system, or maybe a hose end sprinkler where you can move that around the yard. But that's really what works well for turf, where you're getting that overall coverage. And again, depending on your type of soil, a cycle and soak may be necessary to make sure that that water is percolating down into the soil and not just running off. And then trees are again going to need something a little bit different. So a lot of times people will tell me, well, I don't know what's going on with my tree. Like, it seems like it's dying, but I have an irrigation system for my grass. And so that's not how a tree needs to be watered. And I think I have an illustration in one of the other slides that shows a little bit better. But for a tree, you're either going to want to put in a soaker hose ring around the tree, or you're going to want to water that manually. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, I think, maybe in the next couple of slides. Maintenance in general, pruning with smaller shrubs and things like that, it's not as important. You can kind of prune any time of the year. For large trees, we really recommend holding off until the fall to prune those. But really make sure that, you're doing that at the right time of the year. And, if you have something that's flowering a lot, deadheading, which is just removing those flowers once they're fully bloomed, that encourages the plant to put out new flowers. So that can be really helpful. But again, with shrubs and things like that, I think there's room to prune, kind of anytime, but just be a little bit more cautious with the trees. And then one other thing with shrubs, depending on the shrub, but a lot of our native types of shrubs, they prefer a pyramid type. And I'm not saying you have to prune it into like a triangular pyramid, but what I mean by that is leaving the base wider than the top so that the bottom of the shrub can get sunlight. Because sometimes what happens when we kind of do more of a round, or we leave that top really wide and narrow the bottom, is the bottom kind of will get thin and maybe not produce as much foliage because it's not getting enough sunlight. So that's kind of one thing. And that tends to be more so with our native shrubs, but it's just a kind of a good tip in general. And on maintenance for grass, mowing height and frequency is so important to the overall health of your turf grass. Turf grass does not want to have more than 1/3 of the leaf blade removed at any given time. So in the cooler parts of the year, that might mean mowing your grass once a month. But in the summer, that might mean mowing your grass every week. So really look at how fast your grass is growing and really try not to remove more than 1/3 of that leaf blade. One thing that we see so commonly in our area down here in the valley in the summertime is that these yard people, they can't keep up with the mowing. So they come and they mow the grass as short as they possibly can. The grass is 4, 5, 6 inches long, and then they mow it down to about 1 inch. And nothing stresses the grass more in the summer than for it to be mowed like that. That it makes the grass so stressed out. And then when the grass gets stressed out, that is like a signal to all the fungus and the bacteria and all these different pathogens and pests to, oh, the grass is weak, let's go attack it. And then the next thing you know, you have take all root rot, brown patch, whatever, and all the grass is dying. So mowing height and frequency are really important. And that's something that is going to change over the year, throughout the year, as our light, is changing. As the day gets longer, you're going to mow more. As the day gets shorter, you're going to mow less. Okay, I think we're probably getting close to the end of our time, so I'm gonna wrap it up quickly. Watering trees. This is something that was shared with me by our A&M forester, Bill Green. This is kind of a simple, he calls it the 1-2-3, 3-2-1 watering for tree establishment. And so that's really just that in the first month, you're going to water 3 times a week over the root ball in the absence of rain. Remember, all of these watering tips are in the absence of rain. If it's raining, you don't need to be watering. In the second month, you'll reduce that to 2 times a week. And then in that third month, you'll drop that down to once a week. And then he just has some general tips down here, watering 2 to 3 times a month through April through October, and then take that down to 1 or 2 times a month, November through March. So, and then one thing that he recommends, one thing that people never know is how much do I water my tree? Their general recommendation is that you want to put 5 gallons of water per inch of caliper. So there are these little tools that you can use to measure the caliper of the tree. That's basically just what is the diameter of the tree trunk. If you have a little tiny tree, it's a baby that's only maybe got a 1-inch trunk on it, then you're only going to need to put out 5 gallons. And he has a tip right here. If you don't know what that is, you can easily get a 5-gallon bucket, put your water hose in it, turn it on, and time how long it takes to fill that bucket. Let's say it's 2 minutes. Okay, I need to put out 15 gallons, 2, 4, 6. I'm going to put my water hose out here, run it for 6 minutes, and I know that 15 gallons will have been put out. So just some simple ways to kind of help remember how to water our trees. And where is my next slide? I am stuck for some reason. There we go. Okay, this is my last slide. I have to say this. This is one thing that what happened here? Anyways, can you all see this slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. I wasn't sure because my Canva is doing something weird over here. I always have to include this because this is like one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to trees and mulch, because I love trees and I love mulch. But mulch volcanoes are bad, very bad. Don't do this. This is, and I see this done all the time by landscape crews, by city crews, grounds crews. The thing about a tree is, and I don't know if y'all can see my arrow, but the root flare, which is the part of the trunk that kind of starts to flare out, that part of the tree needs to be above the soil line and it should not have mulch up on it. That part of the tree is not designed or intended to stay wet. So when you have soil up on that or you have mulch up on that, you're retaining moisture in that area. And that's a big no-no for the trees, right? So don't mulch volcano, and then proper planting of a tree. This is just an illustration that I always like to share. I would say the number one mistake people make with planting trees is digging the hole too deep, because again, you want that root flare to be above the soil line. You want your hole to be wider than it is deep because you want to help encourage those roots to grow out laterally. And then the other thing is that, and I didn't include this illustration in here, but when you're watering a tree, you want to water out at the drip line. So that means the drip line is the edge of the canopy of the tree. And if you can see my arrow, I'm kind of pointing out here to the edges of this tree. So as your tree grows, the ring of where you're putting that water should get larger, because the tree doesn't need the water over here at the trunk. It needs it way out here at the edge of the canopy, because that's where the newest roots are. And those are the roots that are better able to absorb water and moisture. Okay, I think that, yes, that was my last slide. Thank you so much for your time and attention. If anybody has any questions, please let me know.
As I'm giving a second for them to put a question in the chat if they have one, Ashley, I'll kind of just throw some to you just for our viewers. So without thinking too hard, something quick that we can do right now in at our house, our yard, to increase curb appeal. What would be your top thing right now?
Top thing, always mulch.
Mulch
and annuals. Those are the two fastest and least expensive things that you can do to add instant curb appeal. If you don't have nice fresh mulch, it's really inexpensive and it's super easy to put out, and it just really ties the space together and gives it a really clean finished look. And then if you have a little extra second to throw in some colorful annuals, I think you're set.
Kind of on the flip side of that question, something that is long-term investment, something that you feel like that we should all put in our back pockets.
Trees. Everybody needs nice trees. Everybody wants shade. We all know it's just getting hotter and hotter. I'm about ready to buy a property with a cave on it. I think we're going underground soon. But I definitely would say trees. Picking a really good tree that's going to give you, a long life with some good shade for your home and for yourself to have a space to be out there.
And just because I like to know with, one with people I work with, but also so our viewers can hear, what is your favorite ornamental in landscape and why?
Ornamental. Oh man, that is so hard because I love them all. But right now, I would have to say that would be blue mist flowers, any of the mist flowers, just because when we have them out there in the garden and they're in full bloom, the butterfly, I feel like a Disney princess. I walk up to that flower and the butterflies are just swarming around me. And so mist flower is definitely at the top of my list.
Awesome. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in, so I'm going to take that I thoroughly enjoyed the presentation and also pulled a couple snippets off as well. So,
Awesome.
Ashley, we appreciate you so much and your time given to our master gardeners as well as our other audience. I think I saw a couple of some people I have been working with in the last couple of weeks and here in Webb County. So, thank you again for your time, and we want to just make mention of our final Lunch and Learn session that will be coming up in 2 weeks. So not next Friday, but the Friday following. And we'll have Dr. Juan Enciso as we kind of wrap up looking at planning for our fall vegetable garden. So stay tuned and we'll see you then. And again, Ashley, thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you all to our participants today. Y'all have a great and wonderful weekend. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.